For the longest time, the story we told ourselves about treating depression was pretty straightforward. But that story is changing, and it's changing fast. We're in the middle of a huge shift, moving away from a one-size-fits-all approach to something way more complex, more dynamic, and honestly, a lot more personal. So let's dive into this evolution in the science of depression.
So why is this big shift even happening? Well, it really boils down to this one number, 60%. Just think about that for a second. That's how many patients actually stop taking their antidepressants. Why? Well, either the meds aren't working well enough or the side effects are just too much to live with. This isn't just a tiny issue. It's a massive signal that for most people, what we've been doing, it's just not cutting it. Okay, so here's how we're going to unpack all this. We'll start with what's called the antidepressant plateau. Then we'll talk about moving beyond the whole chemical imbalance idea. After that, we'll get into the really exciting new wave of treatments. And we'll wrap up by looking at where this is all headed, a future that's all about you, the individual. All right, part one, the antidepressant plateau. Let's dig into why the treatments we have right now so often just aren't enough. So when you look at the challenges with the usual antidepressants, the picture gets really clear. First off, remission rates. That means getting to a point where you're pretty much symptom-free. Well, they're under 40%. And even if a drug is going to work for you, you might be waiting anywhere from 2 to 12 weeks to find out. That's a long time to wait when you're suffering. And then you layer on the side effects. And suddenly, that 60% number we started with makes a whole lot of sense. And here's something that might surprise you. When scientists run clinical trials, the difference between the actual drug and a placebo, a sugar pill, is often, well, it's pretty small. They have a term for it, effect size. And for a lot of these drugs, it's only about zero point 0.3. What does that actually mean? It means there's an 88% overlap between how the drug group feels and how the placebo group feels. Now, the drugs do work, but that gap isn't nearly as wide as most of us probably imagine.
So what does this mean for a real person going through treatment? It means it's often a long road of trial and error. There was this huge, really important study called the STARD study, and it found that, yeah, about 2/3 of patients can eventually get to remission. But, and this is a big but, it often takes a whole sequence of steps. Trying one drug, then maybe adding a second one, or switching to something else entirely. And the tough part is, with every new attempt, your chances of success actually go down. It just screams out that we need a better, more targeted approach.
Okay, so that leads us right into part two. Because to build better treatments, we had to first get a better handle on the problem itself. This is all about rethinking the very biology of depression. For a long, long time, the main story was the monoamine hypothesis. You've probably heard it called the chemical imbalance theory. The idea that depression is just not enough serotonin, for example. It's a simple story and it's easy to grasp. But it turns out it's probably too simple. The new way of thinking is that depression isn't about a shortage of one chemical. It's a systems-level problem. It's about breakdowns in communication across whole brain circuits. So we've stopped looking for one faulty wire and started realizing the entire power grid might be unstable. And once you start thinking about the whole network, different characters take center stage. Let's talk about glutamate and GABA. These two are the most common neurotransmitters in your entire brain. The easiest way to think about them is that glutamate is the gas pedal. It gets things going, makes neurons fire. And GABA, that's the brake pedal, telling everything to slow down. And more, the science is pointing to an imbalance between this gas and brake system as a huge piece of the puzzle. So what happens when you start designing drugs that target these new pathways? Well, that brings us to part three, the new wave of treatments. As soon as scientists began focusing on the whole network, on glutamate and GABA, they started seeing really different and in many cases, much, much faster results.
Just take a look at some of these innovations. You've got esketamine, which is now approved for treatment-resistant depression. It works on that gas pedal, the glutamate system. Then there's zuranolone for postpartum depression, which targets the brake pedal, GABA. And then you have something like psilocybin, which is getting a lot of attention. It seems to work on a whole other level, kind of resetting entire brain networks. The key takeaway here is that these aren't just slightly better versions of old drugs. They work in completely new ways.
But maybe the biggest game changer of all is the speed. We're talking about treatments that can start working within hours or days, not weeks, not months. For anyone who has been in that dark place, the difference between waiting a day and waiting 2 months for relief, well, it's everything. It's absolutely life-changing. All right, let's wrap up by looking ahead. Part 4, the future is personal. It all comes back to this.
If depression is a network problem, and my brain network is different from your brain network, then why would we expect the same treatment to work for both of us? The ultimate goal here is to get away from one-size-fits-all and get to what they call N-of-1 treatment. That means treatment designed for one person, and one person only, you.
So how do we get there? It's really happening on two amazing fronts. First, there's the microbiota gut-brain axis. It basically means we're finally understanding that the trillions of tiny microbes in your gut are constantly talking to your brain, influencing your mood and chemistry. And the second frontier? It's artificial intelligence meets something called multi-omics. This is where we can take a snapshot of your entire biology, your genes, your proteins, all of it, and use AI to find the unique biological fingerprint of your depression.
So what does that look like in the real world? It's basically a 3-step playbook. Step 1, you gather all that data, the genomics, proteomics, the whole shebang. Step 2, you feed it all to an AI, which builds a unique map of that person's biology and figures out their specific biotype of depression. And then, step 3, you use that map to pick the perfect treatment for that specific person. The goal is to get it right on the very first try.
And this is where it gets really sci-fi. The endgame for all of this is to create a digital twin for each patient. Seriously, imagine a perfect virtual copy of your own biological systems running on a computer. Doctors could test dozens of different drugs or therapies on your digital twin to see what works best before you ever have to take anything yourself. It would completely eliminate the trial and error. This is the absolute peak of personalized medicine.
So all of this leaves us with a really interesting question to think about. Is the future of depression treatment going to be a pill or a personal algorithm? The science is taking us from a simple story solved by one kind of pill to a super complex network problem that might be solved by a unique algorithm for each of us. But the real answer probably isn't one or the other. It's likely both. A future where incredible new medicines are guided by data that's all about you. A future where, hopefully, we can finally move beyond that antidepressant plateau for good.